Hello, and welcome to Creating Space in Conversation with. My name is Ingrid Pope, and I am the founder of Creating Space. Our mission is to declutter the world of everything that gets in our way, and that gets in our way of being our best selves. Today, I'm delighted to be speaking with Vikki Barnes, who is a clinical psychologist focusing on positive psychology and happiness. She's the founder of Positive Wellbeing, which is a consultancy bringing positive psychology into organizations. So I'm a big fan of positivity and positive psychology, and I look forward to hearing what we can learn from Vikki today. Vikki, hi, it's brilliant to talk to you today. I'm very excited. Positive psychology is something that I'm really interested in and really curious about, and it's your thing. So I look forward to having a chat about that.
Me too.
Now, I'm really curious. So positive psychology, in a nutshell, when we think about it, we just think positivity, great. But of course, your work is all about bringing it and embedding it into organizations. And I'm really curious about how that's going, how receptive people are. Where is it that you feel you make most of a difference?
I think in terms of how receptive people are, there's a big swell about mental health at the moment, isn't there, which is fantastic. I think that it's relatively recent. You know, historically, we haven't been that great at recognising and working with mental ill health or even mental well-being, which is obviously the other end of the spectrum. From ill health to well-being, mental health is that thing that is that spectrum that we're all on. So the first thing is that mental health's for everyone, and people are starting to realise that. In terms of being receptive, there's a lot going on now. You'll have heard about mental health first aid and kind of getting ambassadors into organisations to help boost mental health in different companies and businesses, which is fantastic. My concern is that that's where a lot of people are stopping, because that's a very, it's kind of a first point of contact really, or first port of call for a lot of people. It's a bit like first aid, any kind of first aid, physical first aid. You have your first aiders, physical first aiders, and your mental health first aiders. We just need to do a bit more to keep ourselves well and to be proactive. So that's where positive psychology comes in. And positive psychology is the proactive model rather than the reactive model. So what we're doing there is we're trying to be our best every day and do things that we can do every single day, really easy, simple techniques. It's not rocket science. And that helps us to be more resilient, more able to deal with, you know, the negative things and the stresses of life. And we can cope better because we're always striving for a life that we want to live, a meaningful life and a pleasurable life and a good life, rather than focusing on the thing that's gone wrong and then just trying to eradicate the symptoms around that, which is traditional kind of mental health models. So I hope that makes sense in terms of positive psychology is pushing something forwards to be more proactive. And I think people are starting to realise that, probably because I'm harping on about it so much. But generally, the receptiveness is mostly around that kind of lower level mental health, first instance, first aid type work.
And perhaps some cynics might say just taking that box and just having a mental health first aider or mental well-being first aider in place, but then actually doing maybe more in-depth work.
Yeah, there are always going to be the box tickers for sure. And it's not my place to say who they are, but I am aware that happens. And that's my concern, if I'm honest, that we'll tick those boxes, but we're not actually putting the right things in place to really help people. And obviously, we're passionate about helping people, aren't we, and getting people to their best. And in order to do that, we do need to do a little bit more than just tick those boxes.
And I wonder, so if we move a little bit into the, well, how do we do that? How do we help people be at their best? And I know we've had a little bit of a chat around, you know, this mental clutter and the emotional clutter, and that not being very easy to declutter, and perhaps a key being to understand it better, to minimize it, to stop it getting in our way. So how do we help people do that?
There are so many techniques that we can use, but I think that the first thing to do is to just start focusing on when do we feel well, and asking people, when's the last time that you felt great? If you look at that mental health spectrum, when's the last time that you felt decluttered, right? Whether it's physically or mentally, and what was going on? What did you do? What did somebody else help you with? What was life like then? And what can we replicate, and how can we do more of that? And that's really a first step. And that's obviously a positive psychology way of looking at it, because we're looking at the optimistic, hopeful, positive, to use the word in the title, side of things. We're not ignoring that things are difficult and that, you know, negative emotions are there. They're all there for a reason, and we need to give those their place as well. But we're just not giving them so much focus that it then all becomes kind of all encompassing. So I think the first step is, what do we want? When were we feeling great? And how do we get to that state of mental, I mean, you talk about declutter, I love that word, because that sense of calm and contentment and happiness, I think, is often really heavily associated with feeling decluttered, in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, so really that angle of reinforcing the positive, and it might sound, I'm going to use the word cheesy, even though that's probably not the right word. But I'm just thinking of, you know, what responses could be out there and what the resistance might be, but really just giving more space to the good stuff rather than giving all our focus and our attention to the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people are resistant. So there's this concept of cherophobia, which is a fear of happiness. So this is a thing. So people have a fear of happiness, and theorists are saying that it's partly because we worry that if we're happy, then something bad's got to happen after that. And it's human nature, and some cultures are better at it than others. And I think that British people are particularly good at this. You know, we don't want to be too happy, because my nan always used to say that merry nights bring sad mornings. It's that kind of mindset that's, you know, if you're having a really great time, then something's got to go wrong. And Brené Brown, who's one of my inspirations, she's a fantastic author and speaker and researcher. She calls it foreboding joy, and it's this, you know, when we're feeling really joyful, we think that, yeah, something's got to be looming that's going to tip the balance, so we can't possibly have it all. But that isn't what happens. You know, just because we're happy and we're focusing on the positive and we're optimistic, it doesn't make bad things happen. It just, you know, neurologically, I won't go into the science of it too much, but neurologically, when we're thinking positively, our brains are becoming more positive, and our brains are organs, not muscles, but it acts in the same kind of way as a muscle. If we practice positivity and optimism, then that's what our brains are more practiced in, so then they become better at that. So then our bodies respond to that, our minds respond to that, and we make better choices in life. And, you know, it does sound cheesy and fluffy and all of that stuff, and I'm completely aware of that, but there's all this science behind it, and it's evidence-based theory and researched model. So, and it really does work. We know that our neurochemicals are happy chemicals in our brain, that oxytocin and endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, they all fire when we're engaging in positive psychology practices. It's all there, right, for us to see. You know, brain imaging research, it shows us that this stuff does really work. So I think that we just have to get our heads around the fact that, you know, it's simple, but it's really effective, and it really does help us to feel better.
And yet, you know, we say it's simple, and sometimes I think it can be, and I think sometimes it's really hard for some people, you know.
Yeah. I think by simple, you're right to pick me up on that, because by simple I mean, you know, this thing that I say, it's not rocket science. It's in theory, it's very simple. You know, to write a gratitude diary, or to sit for 2 minutes silently being still and mindful, or to display kindness to somebody, or to think about the good things that have happened in your day. It's simple, but you're absolutely right, it's not always easy. And that's because we're hardwired for negativity, and our brains pick up on threat and negative things that happen in the environment much more than they do the positive. So we have to, it's an effort, we have to work hard at it. and we have to work even more hard when we're going through a difficult time.
Yeah.
And I know myself and plenty of people that I've spoken to over the years that when you're down in the dumps, let's say, it's really difficult actually to pull yourself up. And that's why that proactive approach of just doing this all the time and not waiting until you get sick, which is what mental health, first aid and traditional mental health methods and traditional psychology as well. I'm a psychologist, but I'm honest about this stuff. It tends to be working on problems. When people become ill, then they go and get help or counselling. But what positive psychology is, it's, well, let's just do this stuff every day that's going to help us when things do go a bit wrong.
And I guess there's also an element there of control, isn't there? That's actually something that we can do. That's in our control to influence things. Because sometimes we might feel a bit helpless.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole topic of positive psychology, which is all about locus of control, they call it. And that's, what do you feel like you're in control of yourself, and what do you feel comes from, the outside world, other people, the universe, higher forces, whatever you believe in. So there are some things that you can completely control and some things that you can't, but there's always an element of everything that you can take control of, even if that's just your own response to it or your own behavior, or the next step that you're going to take is the bit that you're in control of. And having that sense of control is so important for people, because humans they like to feel like they have choices, and they like to feel like what they do has an impact on their lives, and that's about having control over something. And when we feel out of control, we feel really unsafe, and that doesn't bode well for us in terms of our mental health. So yeah, you're absolutely right to mention that, for sure.
Yeah, that element of safety. Yeah, that there's so often fear is at the base of so much that can perhaps distract us and make us go down wrong paths.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And so I wonder, in terms of the work that you do with organizations, what do you find people are the most receptive to?
I find that when I actually go in and get people experiencing this, even the cynical ones tend to come. And in fact, it's the most cynical ones that will come up to me at the end and say, okay, I didn't expect that. I didn't think that was going to happen. I did not think you were going to do that, and that I was going to feel that way. Because they're normally quite vocal in the beginning. They'll say, this isn't my thing. I don't need this. I'm fine. I don't do this fluffy stuff. But it really isn't fluffy when you get into it. It's just human nature. It's human interaction. It's about relationships. It's about your response to everything that happens in the world. You can't get away from the fact that you have a mind. So we have to train our minds to be the best that they can be. And I think most people are receptive. So some people really like the science element. So when I start talking about, the brain and the neurochemistry and the physiology of what's going on inside of us, some people really like that because they want that more tangible, although it's not really, but that more kind of tangible scientific element to it. Other people really like the interactive stuff, so being kind to one another, practicing gratitude, and that a bit more kind of transcendent stuff that just makes you feel really good. Because when somebody's nice to you or pays you a compliment or tells you that they're grateful for something you've done, it makes you feel good, and it produces those happy hormones and those chemicals. So all of the science and the more kind of practical side of it, it's all completely linked. And I think it's when people really experience it, and I love those light bulb moments. You can see it in people's faces, and they're thinking, okay, I get this now. I can do this. I can actually go and make some changes in my life, and this is going to make a difference to me and to other people. That's what I tend to get. Like, this is going to be, people will say to me, this is going to be really good in my life, but actually I'm going to tell my partner how to do this, or my colleagues, or my kids, and that's when I know that they've really taken it on board.
And that's brilliant, isn't it? That's such a brilliant feeling when you feel like actually you're spreading something positive, actually.
Yeah.
And so if people want to experience you and experience that positive psychology and feel and have those light bulb moments for themselves, you're running a retreat soon, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, that's a really good introduction. So I'm running this with a really good friend of mine called Carola Becker, and she's fantastic nutritionist, and she's a coach, and she's brilliant at what she does. So she's got all of that, what you put in your body side sorted. I'm going to be talking about the mind, and we're going to be doing lots of practices, and together we've got kind of this holistic well-being approach. It's at the Thurleston Hotel in Devon. It's the 14th to the 16th of October this year, and it's just going to be an all-round outdoorsy. Hopefully, if the weather's nice enough, we might even go for a surf or a sea swim.
Ooh.
I know, but there'll be lots of lovely food. It's a really beautiful spa hotel. It's a really nice retreat, and I think it's positive from my side. It's positive psychology based, and Carol is a real ambassador for that too. So we work really well together to just get people feeling like their very best. And I just think that given what we've all kind of been going through these past few months, it's a really nice time to do something like that and treat ourselves. So I'm selfishly really looking forward to it myself as well.
I can imagine. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we'll put the details into the description also, so if anybody's interested, they can get in touch with you. But thank you very much for this brief kind of little whistle-top intro into positive psychology. There's so much there. I love positive psychology, and I'm fascinated by all the science behind it and why and how it works. So thank you very much. That was just a really interesting chat. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, are you a cynic? How much do you believe in all this stuff which feels and sounds really fluffy, but actually has quite a lot of science behind it? And we only scratched the surface, obviously, today. But in terms of the balance, your happiness balance, where do you sit? Do you tend to see the positives in life, or do you tend to see the negatives and focus on all the stuff that is going wrong? I remember working with a client once, and she was very worried about going on a trip, and it was holding her back, and she really wasn't traveling at all because she was always worried about all these unexpected awful things that could perhaps happen. And I remember at the time challenging her and said, well, how about all the unexpected great things that could happen? So do you think about the stuff that might go wrong? Or do you think about stuff that could go right and maybe even remember all the times and stuff has gone right? And I was also fascinated by the cultural aspect of it. What are you noticing about your own culture and how okay it is to be happy and focus on the positive? And what are you noticing about other cultures also? So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I wish you a happy rest of day and look forward to more conversations about creating space.